Lena Harper wiped the sweat and grease from her hands as she stepped back to admire the line of jets gleaming under the hangar lights. The engines were cold, silent, and perfect, each one a testament to her tireless attention to detail. Most people at the base called her just a mechanic, a phrase that usually came with a shrug or a patronizing smile. Lena didn't mind. She loved her work. She loved the hum of the engines, the smell of hydraulic fluid, the quiet thrill of knowing the intricate systems of an aircraft better than anyone else. Every wire, every bolt, every panel had a story, a reason, a function that only someone who truly cared could appreciate. And Lena cared. Her mornings began before sunrise. Arriving at the base while the air was still thick with fog, her boots echoing across the concrete. She would check the maintenance logs, go over the previous day's inspections, and start her rounds with the precision of a surgeon. Today, she moved from jet to jet with practiced ease, her hands moving quickly and confidently, checking hydraulic lines, verifying sensor calibrations, and listening carefully to the subtle hums and clicks that revealed the health of the aircraft. Lena had always found a strange satisfaction in this routine. Others might see it as repetitive, tedious even, but she considered it a kind of meditation, a way to connect with the machine as if it were alive. Despite her skill, Lena was painfully aware of how invisible she often felt. Pilots, with their flashy flight suits and confident swagger, received recognition, promotions, and medals. Meanwhile, mechanics like her remained in the shadows, crucial yet overlooked. Lena knew her work saved lives in ways most people never realized, yet she longed for an opportunity to show that she was capable of more than tightening bolts and swapping hydraulic lines. She wanted to matter in the skies, not just on the ground. The hangar buzzed with activity as Lena moved to her next assignment. Junior mechanics scuttled about, lifting panels and hauling toolkits, while senior technicians shouted instructions. Lena's eyes scanned every detail with surgical precision. When she reached the last jet in her round, a sleek F-15E Strike Eagle, she paused, her brow furrowing slightly. Something was off. A sensor reading blinked faintly on the diagnostic panel, a minor fluctuation that would normally be dismissed as an anomaly. But Lena's instincts pricked. She leaned in closer, running her hands over the panel, feeling the subtle vibration of the aircraft frame beneath her gloves. It wasn't much, but her gut told her that the jet wasn't entirely ready for the mission today. "Morning, Lena," called Sergeant Hayes, a gruff, good-natured mechanic with a beard streaked with gray. He waved from across the hangar. "Everything ready for the big flight?" Lena straightened, masking her unease with a practiced smile. "Almost," she replied. "Just a couple of things to double-check." "You know me," Hayes chuckled. "I know. You're the only one I trust to notice the little things." Lena nodded, appreciating the rare acknowledgement. She finished her inspection and recorded the jet's status in the maintenance log. It passed all official checks, but the nagging feeling in her stomach didn't fade. She sighed and moved on to the next aircraft, trying to focus on routine tasks. By mid-morning, the hangar was a symphony of controlled chaos. Pilots were suiting up, radios buzzed with instructions, and Lena coordinated last-minute checks for the squadron's upcoming reconnaissance mission over hostile airspace. Today was critical. Intelligence reports had indicated heightened enemy activity, and the success of this mission could influence strategic decisions at the highest levels. Every pilot's jet needed to be flawless, and Lena was responsible for ensuring that. She took her role seriously. Lives depended on her. She glanced at the squadron numbers as they made final preparations. Captain Reynolds, a young but seasoned pilot, adjusted his flight gloves while exchanging jokes with his wingman, Lieutenant Torres. Lena had worked with both before, performing last-minute repairs and calibrations while they ran through pre-flight checks. The pilots were skilled, confident, and daring, but Lena knew the truth. Without the ground crew, none of them would ever leave the runway safely. She often wondered if they fully appreciated that, and though she rarely voiced her thoughts, a quiet pride swelled in her chest. As she moved through the hangar, Lena reflected on her journey to this point. She hadn't always intended to become a mechanic. In fact, she had dreamed of flying, soaring above the clouds, feeling the rush of speed and freedom. But life had other plans. Financial constraints, family responsibilities, and the realities of military assignment had kept her grounded. Yet she had adapted, finding fulfillment in what she could control. She had honed her craft, mastered complex systems, and developed a reputation for being meticulous and reliable. Even if the world saw her as just a mechanic, she knew her worth. A soft beep from her diagnostic console drew her attention. Lena's eyes narrowed. She scanned the data carefully, double-checking readings, rerunning diagnostics, and comparing them to previous logs. The fluctuation she had noticed earlier persisted, subtle but consistent. Lena frowned. If left unchecked, it could escalate into a critical failure mid-flight. Her mind raced with possibilities, weighing the odds, considering contingencies. She knew she had to act. She pulled out her toolkit and opened the jet's access panel, fingers flying over wiring and connectors with practiced precision. She adjusted a sensor, recalibrated a minor circuit, and ran the diagnostics again. The reading stabilized, though she didn't relax entirely. It was a small victory, but one that gave her a sliver of reassurance. Lena wiped her hands on her overalls and leaned back, letting out a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. Around her, the hangar continued its frenetic pace. Pilots began boarding their jets, engines roared to life, and Lena made final checks, guiding technicians and offering advice where needed. She moved with purpose, a quiet force ensuring that everything ran smoothly. She didn't seek praise. The satisfaction of knowing her work mattered was reward enough. Yet deep down, she longed for a moment where she could step beyond her role, where her skills could directly impact the mission in a way that everyone could see and respect. As the squadron prepared to taxi down the runway, Lena stood at the edge of the hangar, watching the jets line up. She felt a mixture of pride, anxiety, and anticipation. Today, something in her gut told her wouldn't be ordinary. Something would challenge her in ways she hadn't yet imagined. And when that moment came, she knew she would have to rise to it, not just as a mechanic, but as someone capable of extraordinary courage under pressure. With one final glance at the jets, Lena adjusted her gloves, squared her shoulders, and whispered to herself, "Let's make sure they all get home." The engines roared to life, a powerful vibration shaking the hangar floor. Pilots gave their final thumbs up, and the squadron taxied toward the runway, engines screaming in unison. Lena's heart raced with anticipation. She had prepared for every eventuality, except what was about to happen mid-mission. A test of skill, courage, and resolve that would challenge everything she thought she knew about herself. Today, the ordinary mechanic would be called upon to do something truly extraordinary. The briefing room was a stark contrast to the buzzing hangar. Fluorescent lights cast harsh shadows across the faces of the squadron pilots, their expressions a mix of determination and barely concealed anxiety. Lena Harper stood near the back, clipboard in hand, quietly observing the preparations. Though she wasn't a pilot, she felt the weight of the mission pressing down on her as heavily as it did on them. Every detail mattered today, and she had spent hours ensuring that each aircraft was ready. Still, an unease had settled over her like a storm cloud. Commander Shaw, the mission leader, stepped to the front, a crisp uniform pressed and perfectly aligned. "Squadron," he began, his voice calm but firm. We've received intelligence reports indicating increased enemy patrols in the northern sector. Our objective is reconnaissance and surveillance of strategic installations. This is high risk, but essential. Every second counts, and every jet in this room is critical to the mission's success. The pilots nodded, some exchanging brief glances, while others adjusted their helmets, gloves, or flight suits. Lena listened carefully, noting the route, altitude parameters, and anticipated hazards. She understood the stakes better than most. A single mechanical failure could mean disaster, not just for the pilot, but for the entire squadron. Her heart thumped with quiet tension as she visualized the jets cutting through the sky, navigating hostile airspace. Captain Reynolds, the mission's lead pilot, leaned forward, his green eyes sharp behind his visor. Intel suggests that enemy forces may have planted interference devices along key flight paths. Electronic disruption is possible. If comms go down, stick to the plan and maintain formation. His voice was steady, but Lena could sense the subtle edge of worry beneath his practiced composure. Lena checked her notes against the pilot's briefing. Everything lined up perfectly, or so it seemed. But she had learned from experience that even the smallest overlooked detail could escalate into catastrophe. She glanced at the F-15E she had just finished inspecting. Its systems were stable now, but a minor anomaly in the sensor array had triggered a subtle fluctuation she couldn't ignore. Lena's instincts told her that something might go wrong mid-mission. She couldn't shake the feeling that she would need to act quickly, decisively, and without hesitation. As the briefing continued, Lena's attention drifted to the mechanics and junior technicians. They were taking notes, adjusting tools, and running final checks under her supervision. She had trained them well, instilling in each of them a meticulous attention to detail, a commitment to excellence, and the understanding that the smallest adjustment could save a life. She admired their dedication, but knew that when the moment came, it would be up to her to make the tough calls. Commander Shaw's finger traced the route on the digital map. We expect light resistance initially, but Intel predicts a concentrated anti-air presence near the northern ridge. Reconnaissance data must be collected and transmitted in real time. Avoid engagement unless absolutely necessary. We cannot afford to lose any jets. Understood? Understood, the pilots replied in unison, their voices echoing in the room. Lena nodded silently. She had heard similar briefings countless times before, yet today felt different. There was an unusual tension in the air, a weight that pressed down on her chest. She reviewed the jet diagnostics one more time, scanning for any irregularities, any anomaly, any flaw that could become fatal. Her eyes lingered on the F-15E's telemetry. The sensor she had corrected earlier remained within acceptable parameters. But she noticed a minor fluctuation in hydraulic pressure that wasn't alarming yet, but could become so in the turbulent conditions anticipated over hostile territory. The squadron began gearing up. Lena moved to the hangar doors, clipboard in hand, as pilots suited up and began boarding their jets. Engines roared to life, shaking the ground beneath her boots. Lena's heart raced. She felt a mix of pride and apprehension. She had prepared the aircraft meticulously, but the truth was undeniable. Once these jets left the ground, she would have little control over what happened next. The outcome of the mission depended on the machines, the pilots, and unknowingly, her. Captain Reynolds taxied his jet forward, the rumble echoing through the hangar. He caught Lena's eye through the cockpit glass and gave a small nod of reassurance. Lena returned the gesture, though she could feel the knot of anxiety tighten in her stomach. The engines grew louder as the jets lined up along the runway, ready to take off. Lena's eyes flicked to the skies outside. She imagined the squadron piercing through clouds, maneuvering with precision, unaware that the danger looming ahead was not enemy fire alone. Final checks, Lena muttered to herself. She moved swiftly from jet to jet, coordinating with the ground crew. Fuel pumps stable. Hydraulics checked. Sensors recalibrated. Communications clear. Weapon systems locked. Her voice was calm, precise, but her mind raced with contingency plans. If anything went wrong, she would have to act fast, and she didn't yet know how fast she would be forced to think, or how much courage she would need to summon. Lieutenant Torres, the young wingman, glanced at her and asked, "Everything okay, Harper?" Lena smiled briefly, hiding the tension behind her usual composure. "Just doing my job, Torres. You all stay sharp out there." With a final sweep of the hangar, Lena stepped aside, watching the jets as they accelerated down the runway and lifted gracefully into the sky. A wave of awe surged through her chest. There was nothing ordinary about this moment. These aircraft, these pilots, these missions, this was the culmination of everything she had worked for. And yet, a gnawing sense of unease remained. Something was coming, and she knew instinctively that it would test her in ways she had never been tested before. As the squadron disappeared into the clouds, Lena returned to her station, eyes glued to the screens tracking their positions. She monitored the telemetry, analyzing every blip, every signal, every subtle change. The morning sun reflected off the polished metal of the hangar, and Lena's reflection looked back at her determined, vigilant, prepared. The ordinary mechanic, invisible to most, was ready to become extraordinary. Minutes passed. Then, a sudden spike in the telemetry data caught her attention. One jet, Captain Reynolds' lead F-15E, showed signs of instability in its hydraulic system. Lena's pulse quickened. The fluctuation was minor, barely noticeable, but her instincts screamed that it could escalate quickly. She leaned forward, adjusting the screens, running diagnostic simulations, and cross-referencing previous maintenance logs. Every nerve in her body tightened, alert to the possibility of disaster. "Not now," she whispered under her breath, hands hovering over the console. She reached for the radio, knowing that she might soon need to communicate directly with Reynolds mid-flight, a violation of protocol, but perhaps the only way to prevent catastrophe. Lena's mind raced through potential solutions, emergency procedures, and creative improvisations. She realized that today, her role as a mechanic would mean more than routine inspections or maintenance logs. Today, she might be the difference between survival and disaster. The sun climbed higher in the sky, casting long shadows across the base. The squadron was en route to its first checkpoint, navigating unpredictable air currents over rugged terrain. Lena's eyes never left the screens, her every thought consumed by the subtle signs of mechanical instability she had detected. She reviewed every system, double-checked every sensor, and prepared mentally for the moment she might be forced to act. It was coming. She could feel it. And when it did, there would be no room for hesitation, no time for fear. In that moment, Lena Harper, just a mechanic to the world, became more than that. She became the unseen guardian, the quiet force behind the machines, the silent protector of the squadron. And unbeknownst to everyone, including herself, the true test of her skill, courage, and ingenuity was only minutes away. The morning sunlight shimmered across the horizon as the squadron cut through the clouds, each jet a sleek arrow of steel slicing through the vast sky. Lena Harper's eyes were glued to the monitors in the control room, tracking the telemetry of every aircraft with meticulous precision. The hum of computers and faint buzz of radios filled the room, a constant reminder of the tension hovering above the mountains where the reconnaissance mission had led them. Everything had appeared routine at first. The pilots maintained formation, communicating in clipped, professional bursts over the radio. The terrain below was jagged, a patchwork of valleys and ridges that could hide enemy movements with ease. Lena's hands hovered over the console, scanning sensor data, double-checking hydraulic pressures, fuel consumption, and engine temperatures. Everything seemed normal until it wasn't. A sudden red warning blared from the lead jet's telemetry, slicing through the room like a knife. Lena's stomach dropped. Hydraulic pressure in Captain Reynolds' F-15E fluctuated violently, while the electrical systems showed erratic spikes. Her heart pounded. "No, no, no, no," she muttered, leaning closer to the screen. The anomaly she had noticed during the pre-flight inspection, small, subtle, nearly ignorable, had escalated into something critical. The jet was unstable. In the cockpit, Reynolds struggled to maintain control. The nose of the aircraft pitched sharply, a violent tremor shaking him in his seat. His hands flew over the controls, but the instruments were unreliable. He radioed the squadron, voice tense. "Control is fluctuating. Something's wrong with the hydraulics. I can't stabilize it." Lena froze for a moment, her mind racing. Protocol forbade her from interfering mid-flight, but there was no time for hesitation. Lives were at stake. She snapped into action, her instincts honed by years of experience and countless late nights in the hangar. Her fingers flew over the console as she pulled up system diagnostics, cross-referenced them with prior maintenance logs, and mentally mapped the jet's complex circuitry and hydraulics. "Captain Reynolds," Lena's voice came through the radio, steady and calm, despite the adrenaline coursing through her veins. "Listen carefully. Divert auxiliary hydraulic pressure to the left wing actuators. Engage secondary stabilizers slowly, one at a time. I'm going to guide you through this." Reynolds' reply was breathless. "Harper, you can't. This is impossible." "I know it's not in the manual," Lena shot back, voice firm. "But follow my instructions exactly. You can stabilize the jet, but you need to trust me completely." The seconds stretched into eternity. Lena's mind raced with every possible scenario. What if the system failed entirely? What if the jet spun out of control? She ran through emergency protocols, improvising repairs in real time, visualizing the jet's internal systems as if she were sitting inside the cockpit herself. Sweat dripped down her temples, but her hands didn't tremble. Every movement, every command, every adjustment had to be precise. One mistake could mean death. In the cockpit, Reynolds did exactly as Lena instructed. The jet shuddered violently, sparks flashing on the dashboard, but slowly, imperceptibly, it began to stabilize. Lena's heart leapt with cautious relief, but she knew the danger wasn't over. The F-15E's systems were fragile, and the mission was far from complete. Every instruction had to be calculated, measured, and timed perfectly. Lena adjusted her headset, keeping multiple lines open. Reduce engine output by 10%. Adjust pitch to 30 degrees. Now, carefully reroute electrical flow to the auxiliary circuits. The pilot obeyed, his hands steadying despite the shaking of the jet. Lena monitored the readings, watching for the smallest fluctuations. Outside, clouds churned with turbulence, and the wind whipped around the aircraft at terrifying speeds. Enemy radar had likely detected the squadron by now, though there was no confirmation yet. Lena didn't care about protocol, rank, or recognition. All that mattered was keeping Reynolds alive and the mission intact. Her mind moved faster than her fingers could type. She realized that the original anomaly had triggered a chain reaction. An electrical overload had caused secondary hydraulic failure, threatening total loss of control. Lena visualized the jet's systems in her mind, mapping out emergency reroutes and power diversions. Divert remaining hydraulic pressure to the left stabilizer lines, she instructed. Engage the backup autopilot systems and maintain steady throttle. You're doing it. I can see it stabilizing. Reynolds' voice trembled, but he followed her directions, his trust absolute. Lena felt a surge of adrenaline, part fear, part exhilaration, as the jet's movements became less erratic, less chaotic. It wasn't fully repaired yet, but it was holding. She could see the trajectory stabilizing on her monitor. Then another alarm blared, secondary electrical failure. Lena's chest tightened. This time, the issue was in the auxiliary power distribution, a system she hadn't expected to fail. She ran calculations rapidly in her head, visualizing how circuits could be rerouted without overloading the remaining systems. She issued commands with calm authority. Reroute circuits from non-critical systems to the primary stabilizers. Reduce energy to non-essential avionics. We're diverting power to keep you airborne. The jet trembled, but Reynolds obeyed, his voice shaky but determined. Lena's guidance was precise, every adjustment calculated in real time. The sensors gradually steadied, hydraulic pressures normalized, and the flight path straightened. Lena allowed herself a brief exhale, but she didn't relax. Another jet was approaching a dangerous ridge, and she knew the crisis might extend further. Minutes felt like hours. Lena's body was tense, eyes fixed on the monitors, heart racing, every nerve alert. She coordinated with the squadron, relaying instructions, analyzing telemetry, and improvising repairs in a manner no protocol had ever authorized. The reality of the situation hit her. She was no longer just a mechanic. She was the lifeline between chaos and survival, the unseen hand guiding the pilots through danger. Outside the hangar, the wind howled over the mountains, clouds swirling like ghostly armies. Inside, Lena's calm voice cut through the chaos. Hydraulic lines stabilized. Electrical system rerouted. Maintain altitude and heading. You're flying, Captain. We've got this. Reynolds' voice finally steadied. Harper, I can't believe it. You're saving us up here. Lena swallowed, trying to mask her fear. Just follow my instructions. We're not done yet. Keep flying. The F-15E responded gradually, obediently. The turbulence shook the squadron, but Lena's guidance had prevented disaster. Every pilot under her supervision now trusted her implicitly, even if they couldn't see her, even if the rules forbade her involvement. She had become their anchor in the storm, the invisible hero keeping their machines and their lives intact. As the jets cleared the ridge, Lena allowed herself the tiniest flicker of hope. The immediate crisis was under control, though the threat of further complications loomed. Her hands hovered over the console, ready for the next challenge. She realized, with a surge of adrenaline and awe, that she was capable of far more than she had ever imagined. The ordinary mechanic, overlooked and underestimated, had just become the defining force of the mission's survival. And above it all, Lena knew one thing with absolute certainty. The moment of reckoning was far from over. Lena Harper's hands trembled slightly as she adjusted the console, though she refused to let fear show in her voice. The warning lights on Captain Reynolds' F-15E continued to flicker, a constant reminder that the crisis was far from over. She could hear the faint whine of other jets in the squadron over the radio, but Reynolds' voice was the one that carried the urgency now. Every second counted. Every instruction she gave could mean the difference between life and death. Captain Reynolds, Lena began, her voice calm, commanding, yet laced with urgency. You need to stabilize the pitch and engage the backup thrusters now. Don't deviate from my instructions. We'll work through this step by step. Reynolds hesitated for a moment. Backup thrusters? That system isn't supposed to handle primary stabilization. It could overload. I know, Lena replied firmly. It's the only option. I'll guide you through every adjustment. Trust me. Trust. That single word carried the weight of the situation. Reynolds' life was in her hands, and she knew it. She visualized the jet's internal systems in her mind, seeing the pathways of hydraulic pressure, electrical flow, and mechanical integrity as clearly as if she were inside the cockpit herself. She began issuing precise, rapid-fire instructions. Reroute auxiliary circuits. Engage secondary stabilizers incrementally. Maintain throttle within specific parameters. And carefully adjust the ailerons to counteract pitch fluctuations. The jet shuddered violently as Reynolds followed her guidance. Sparks flashed intermittently on the dashboard. Indicators swung wildly, and the aircraft pitched sharply. But Lena's focus was unwavering. Her mind raced through technical possibilities, imagining how each adjustment would affect every component. Years of training, hands-on experience, and intuitive understanding of machinery converged in this single moment. She was no longer just a mechanic, she was a mid-mission problem solver, a lifeline, and a guardian of the skies. Around her, the control room was tense. Junior mechanics watched in awe. Technicians whispered in disbelief, and the other squadron monitors displayed the precarious positions of the remaining aircraft. Lena ignored it all, focusing entirely on Reynolds' jet. Every minor fluctuation mattered. Every system interaction could spell success or disaster. Divert auxiliary hydraulic flow to the left stabilizers, Lena instructed. Slowly, incrementally. Watch the pressure gauge. Do not exceed 30%. Reynolds' hands worked over the controls, eyes darting between instruments and Lena's voice. Okay, diverting. 30%. It's holding. Good, Lena said, her voice steady. Now engage the secondary thrusters. Small increments. Balance pitch carefully. Don't rush it. The jet's violent shudders lessened slightly, a small victory that brought a brief spark of relief to Lena's chest. But there was no time to celebrate. Other systems were failing, cascading into potential catastrophe. Lena's brain worked faster than ever, running calculations in real time, predicting outcomes, and improvising repairs on a live airborne machine. She guided Reynolds through electrical reroutes, directing power away from non-essential systems and toward critical stabilizers. Auxiliary systems offline, Lena instructed. Divert energy to the flight control actuators. Adjust yaw by 2 degrees left now. Maintain altitude. The pilot obeyed, his trust absolute. Lena could almost feel the tension in his cockpit, the strain on his muscles, the fear of the unknown. She couldn't see him, couldn't touch the controls, but she was present in every decision he made. Every instruction she gave stabilized the jet a little more, a little closer to safety. Outside, clouds swirled violently, the wind whipping the aircraft with unpredictable gusts. Enemy radar could be tracking them now. Lena didn't know for certain. All she knew was that the jet was her responsibility. She visualized each wire, each hydraulic line, each circuit board as clearly as if she were physically repairing them herself. It was improvisation at its finest, technical brilliance under pressure, a combination of experience, instinct, and courage. Engage the secondary autopilot, Lena said, her voice calm but firm. I'll guide it step by step. We need stability before we reach the next checkpoint. Reynolds followed her directions, and slowly, the jet's violent oscillations began to settle. Lena's fingers moved over the console, inputting commands, adjusting telemetry, and issuing critical guidance. Sweat streaked her forehead, and her muscles ached from tension, but she remained steady. Every second was crucial. One miscalculation, one wrong adjustment, could undo all the progress. A flicker of doubt crept into Lena's mind. Had she accounted for every variable? Every environmental factor? Every mechanical anomaly? Every possible failure? She pushed the thought aside. Doubt would kill Reynolds faster than the failing systems. She focused on action, precision, and timing. Hydraulic pressure stable at 45%. Pitch stabilized. Thrust balanced, she reported, watching the indicators with hawk-like intensity. You're doing well. Maintain heading. We're not out of danger yet, But the jet is responding. Reynolds exhaled, relief and disbelief mingling in his voice. Harper, I can't believe it. You're saving us. Lena swallowed, forcing herself to remain composed. Keep flying. Follow my instructions exactly. That's the only way we get through this. The jet continued to respond, gradually regaining stability. Lena monitored every system, predicting the next potential failure points and issuing preventative instructions. She guided Reynolds through rerouting electrical flow, adjusting hydraulic ratios, and balancing thrust distribution. Every move was calculated, every instruction critical. Minutes stretched into what felt like hours, the tension in the control room palpable. The other pilots watched anxiously as Lena's guidance stabilized the lead jet. They had never seen a mechanic operate like this, orchestrating a mid-air repair from the ground with such precision. Lena had become the invisible force, the crucial link between life and disaster, and she carried the weight of that responsibility with quiet determination. Finally, after what seemed an eternity, the immediate crisis eased. The jet was stable, the warning lights dimmed, and Reynolds maintained altitude with confidence. Lena allowed herself the tiniest flicker of relief, but didn't relax. There were still miles to fly, still potential hazards ahead, and she knew this was only the beginning of her challenge. She leaned back slightly, voice calm but commanding. Good work, Captain. The jet is responding, but maintain all systems carefully. Keep your eyes on instruments and follow my instructions if anything fluctuates. We're not done yet. Outside, the squadron continued its mission, clouds whipping past, engines screaming, the landscape below a blur of mountains and valleys. Lena's mind raced with every contingency, anticipating every possible complication. She was no longer a mechanic hidden in the hangar. She was the heartbeat of the mission, the guiding hand keeping her squadron alive. And for the first time, Lena realized something profound. Courage wasn't just about stepping into danger. It was about taking responsibility, acting decisively, and trusting one's skills when no one else could. The ordinary mechanic she had once been was gone. In her place stood someone extraordinary, a hero, who had just begun to prove herself in ways she had never imagined. The roar of jet engines filled Lena Harper's ears as she watched the telemetry screens with unwavering focus. Captain Reynolds' F-15E had stabilized, but only barely. Every gauge, every indicator, every blinking light told her that the aircraft was still in a fragile, perilous state. The smallest miscalculation could send it tumbling into the rugged terrain below. Lena wiped a bead of sweat from her forehead and leaned closer to the console, hands dancing over the controls as she assessed the next set of challenges. The primary hydraulic systems were compromised, and auxiliary reroutes had only temporarily held the aircraft steady. Electrical circuits were overloaded in some sectors and underpowered in others. Lena's mind worked in overdrive, visualizing the jet's internal layout like a map. She imagined the flight control actuators, the stabilizer hydraulics, the electronic flight instruments, all interacting in a delicate balance. The pilot's life depended on her guiding hand, invisible yet essential. Captain Reynolds. Lena's voice cut through the radio, calm but commanding. We're going to perform a full mid-mission repair. I'll guide you step by step. Keep your hands steady. Trust me completely. Reynolds' reply was tense, mixed with adrenaline and disbelief. Are you? Are you serious? Mid-flight repair? I am. Follow my instructions exactly. One misstep and we could lose control, but we can do this. Outside, the clouds churned violently as the squadron navigated hostile airspace. Enemy radar could have detected them at any moment, though Lena didn't know for sure. She didn't have time to think about it. Every second required absolute concentration. She pulled up the auxiliary system schematics on her console and began directing Reynolds through the process. Step 1. Stabilize the left wing actuators by manually diverting hydraulic flow. Increase pressure by 5% increments. Watch for feedback on the warning indicators. The jet shuddered violently. Sparks flickered on the instrument panel. Reynolds followed her instructions, fingers flying across the controls. Lena watched every movement, ready to issue the next critical adjustment. Sweat dripped down her temples. Her muscles ached, but she refused to look away. She had trained for moments like this in the hangar, running simulations and repairs under controlled conditions, but nothing had prepared her for the real thing, with a human life in the balance. Good. Now divert electrical load from non-essential avionics to the primary stabilizers. Lena instructed, her voice sharp, precise, unwavering. Slowly. We cannot overload the circuits. Reynolds obeyed, a bead of sweat streaking down his brow. It's working, Harper. I can feel it stabilizing. Yes, keep it steady. Maintain heading and altitude. Watch the pressure gauges. The jet responded, gradually smoothing out its violent oscillations. Lena allowed herself a momentary flicker of hope, but she knew better than to relax. The system was still fragile, and another failure could occur at any moment. She recalculated contingencies in her mind, visualizing every hydraulic line, every electronic relay, every stabilizer actuator. Engage the backup flight controls now. Small increments. Adjust pitch 2 degrees up. Maintain throttle at 70%. Outside, the wind buffeted the jet violently, clouds twisting into chaotic shapes. Reynolds' knuckles were white on the controls, his focus absolute. Lena's voice became the anchor, guiding him through the complex, improvised repair with authority she had never had before. Each instruction was a calculated risk, each adjustment a delicate balance between survival and disaster. Minutes passed like hours. Lena monitored every system, predicting failures before they could happen. The jet's behavior gradually became more predictable, more stable, though the danger was far from over. Lena knew that if any further complications arose, she would have to improvise again, rapidly, decisively, and without hesitation. She could not afford doubt, not now. Hydraulics at 80%. Pressure stabilized. Pitch steady. Electrical flow balanced, Lena reported. You're holding, Captain. One more step. Reynolds' voice trembled with relief and exhaustion. I can't believe we're still flying, Harper. You? You're saving my life. Lena's lips pressed into a thin line. Don't celebrate yet. We're not out of danger. Keep monitoring instruments. Stay alert. Follow my instructions. This isn't over. Her mind raced as she prepared the final adjustments for the mid-mission repair. She instructed Reynolds to make a series of incremental reroutes of critical systems, carefully balancing load between remaining operational circuits. Each adjustment was precise, requiring careful timing and absolute coordination. Lena visualized the jet as if she were inside it, manipulating wires, hydraulic lines, and electronic systems with her hands. Her intuition guided her decisions, and her calm voice over the radio became the stabilizing force keeping Reynolds alive. Now, she said, her voice steady and commanding, divert remaining auxiliary power to the primary actuators. Engage secondary thrusters fully, slowly. Adjust roll to 2 degrees left. Maintain throttle. You've got this. The jet responded beautifully, the once turbulent oscillations smoothing out. Reynolds' breathing became steady, his hands no longer shaking on the controls. Lena monitored every gauge, ready to intervene at the slightest sign of instability. Sweat soaked her overalls, her heart raced, but a sense of cautious triumph washed over her. The immediate crisis had been contained. Yet the mission was not yet complete. Lena's gaze swept over the other aircraft in the squadron. They were following formation, but turbulence and enemy threats loomed. She realized that her role might need to extend further, guiding other pilots through complications she had not anticipated. For now, though, the lead jet was stable, a testament to her skill, determination, and courage. "Good work, Captain Reynolds," Lena said finally, her voice calm but tinged with relief. "The jet is holding. Keep flying carefully. We've stabilized it, but stay vigilant." Reynolds' voice softened with awe. "Harper, I don't know how to thank you. You just saved me. Saved all of us." Lena shook her head slightly. "Don't thank me yet. Stay focused. The mission isn't over. We still have miles to cover, and the skies aren't forgiving." Minutes turned into tense hours as the squadron continued through hostile airspace. Lena's hands remained steady over the console, eyes flicking between gauges, telemetry screens, and environmental sensors. Each second demanded vigilance, each instruction critical. She guided Reynolds and the rest of the squadron with authority, expertise, and calm precision. The realization settled over her like a weight and a relief all at once. She was no longer just a mechanic. Today, she had become the guardian of her squadron's lives, the invisible hand keeping them alive amidst chaos. Her skills, courage, and quick thinking had transformed the ordinary into the extraordinary. And as the jets continued toward their objective, Lena Harper understood something she had never felt before. True heroism wasn't about recognition, rank, or glory. It was about action. It was about stepping forward when everyone else hesitated. And in the skies above the mountains, with lives hanging in the balance, Lena had done exactly that. The squadron cut through the clouds with precision, the roar of the engines masking the tension in Lena Harper's chest. Captain Reynolds' F-15E remained stable, a fragile victory in the midst of chaos. But Lena's relief was fleeting. She could see from the telemetry that another jet, Lieutenant Torres' aircraft, was exhibiting irregularities. Hydraulic pressure was dropping sporadically, and the fuel feed sensors were showing inconsistent readings. Lena's eyes narrowed. The crisis wasn't over. It was escalating. She leaned forward, fingers flying over the console. Her mind raced. As she coordinated systems from multiple aircraft simultaneously, a challenge no mechanic was supposed to face. Every second counted. "Torres, listen carefully." Lena's voice cut through the comms. "Divert auxiliary hydraulic flow to the stabilizers. Engage secondary thrusters incrementally. I'm guiding you step by step." Torres' voice trembled. "Harper, this is mid-flight. Are you sure this will work?" "Yes," Lena replied firmly. "Trust me. Follow my instructions exactly. One wrong move and we could all lose control, but we can stabilize your jet." The other pilots monitored, their instruments silently, watching the lead aircraft and waiting to follow Lena's guidance if necessary. No one had ever seen a mechanic operate with such authority, such confidence, such precision. Lena's calm voice became the anchor amidst the storm, directing movements, rerouting systems, and balancing hydraulics with meticulous timing. Her eyes flicked between screens, calculating the optimal flow of power and hydraulics. Torres adjusted the controls as instructed, the jet shuddering but gradually stabilizing. Lena's mind worked faster than any manual, faster than any simulation. She anticipated secondary failures, redirected electrical loads, and balanced thrust distribution. Every decision was a calculated risk, each one executed flawlessly. Minutes passed like hours. Sweat streamed down Lena's face, but her voice remained calm. Hydraulic pressure stable. Electrical circuits rerouted. Pitch and roll balanced. Keep monitoring instruments. We're not out of danger yet, but you're flying, Torres. Well done. The squadron began to breathe a little easier. But Lena knew that the skies were unpredictable, enemy threats were still present, and turbulence could destabilize the jets again at any moment. She had to stay vigilant. One misstep could trigger a chain reaction. Suddenly, Reynolds' voice crackled over the radio, tense again. "Harper, there's turbulence ahead. It's severe. I can feel the controls fighting me." Lena's heart raced. The mountain winds were known for creating violent updrafts and gusts, capable of overwhelming even the most stable aircraft. She quickly calculated the flight path, factoring in the turbulence and the jet's compromised systems. Reduce speed slightly. Adjust altitude by 20 feet. Engage the backup stabilizers fully. Trust the instruments, not your instincts. The jet shook violently as Reynolds obeyed, but gradually the oscillations lessened. Lena monitored every movement, ready to issue further instructions. She realized that the pilots' lives were entirely in her hands, and for the first time, she felt the full weight of that responsibility. As the jets cleared the turbulence, Lena allowed herself a brief moment to breathe. The immediate danger was under control, but she could see the strain on the remaining aircraft. Fuel consumption on Torres' jet was erratic, and minor sensor anomalies continued to appear on secondary systems. Lena quickly devised a plan to redistribute auxiliary power and balance the remaining fuel feeds. "Torres, listen carefully," she instructed, voice calm but commanding. "Divert non-essential electrical systems to the flight control actuators. Adjust throttle gradually. Maintain altitude and heading. We can balance your systems and extend operational capacity." Torres complied, and the jet stabilized further. Lena's heart pounded, adrenaline coursing through her veins, but she remained composed. Her mind moved faster than ever, anticipating potential failures, coordinating systems, and issuing commands. She had become the central force guiding the squadron through a gauntlet of mechanical failures and environmental hazards. Meanwhile, Reynolds and Torres exchanged quick, tense communications, adjusting formation while trusting Lena's guidance. The squadron was moving like a single entity, orchestrated not by the pilots alone, but by Lena's unseen hand. She had become their lifeline, their anchor, their strategist. Suddenly, another warning blared from a third jet. Lena's pulse quickened. "Lee, your auxiliary power is dropping. Engage backup circuits. Maintain current altitude. Follow my instructions." Lee's voice was shaky. "Harper, I'm trying. But the readings keep fluctuating." "You can do this," Lena reassured, her voice steady despite the tension. "Trust the system. Follow the sequence exactly. We're balancing the hydraulics and rerouting electrical flow simultaneously. You're not alone." Her fingers danced over the console, rerouting circuits, adjusting telemetry, and issuing precise instructions. Sweat stung her eyes, but she refused to blink. She was the guardian of the squadron's lives now. She visualized each jet's systems in her mind, a detailed map of hydraulics, electrical circuits, and flight instruments, orchestrating them all with precision. Minutes passed in a blur of tension and focus. Each jet responded to her instructions, slowly regaining stability. Lena allowed herself a brief exhale, but she knew better than to relax. The squadron was still in hostile airspace, and enemy radar could appear at any moment. The margin for error was razor-thin. Finally, Lena spoke, her voice calm but commanding. "Good work, everyone. Systems are stabilized. Keep monitoring instruments and follow procedures. We've made it through the worst of the turbulence, but stay alert." The pilots responded with quiet acknowledgement. Lena's heart swelled with pride, but she remained focused. She knew that this was only the turning point. The mission was far from complete, and the skies were unforgiving. Her vigilance, expertise, and courage would continue to be the lifeline keeping her squadron alive. As the jets continued toward their objective, Lena reflected on the events of the day. She had stepped beyond the role of a mechanic, guiding pilots through a perilous situation with skill, precision, and bravery. She realized that heroism wasn't about rank or recognition. It was about taking responsibility and acting decisively when no one else could. She glanced at the telemetry screens again. Every jet was holding steady, but the mission's final stages were approaching. Lena knew that more challenges were ahead, more split-second decisions, more improvisation. She steeled herself. Whatever came next, she would meet it head-on. She had become the invisible force, ensuring that her squadron survived, and she wasn't about to falter now. For the first time, Lena Harper understood the truth of her own capabilities. The ordinary mechanic she had once been was gone, replaced by someone extraordinary, someone who had faced chaos, fear, and uncertainty, and had emerged as the guiding force of the mission. The skies above were vast and dangerous, but Lena's resolve was unshakable. She had found her place, her purpose, and her courage, and there was no turning back. The squadron flew in tight formation, the once chaotic airspace now seemingly calm after Lena Harper's extraordinary interventions. Yet the hum of engines and the crisp wind whipping past the cockpit reminded her that the mission was far from over. Each pilot's life was still precariously balanced on her knowledge, skill, and unwavering focus. She glanced at the monitors, checking Reynolds, Torres, and Lee's telemetry. Every reading was within operational parameters, but she knew that the true test was still ahead, landing safely and completing the reconnaissance mission with precision. Captain Reynolds, now in full control of his jet, broke the tense silence over the radio. "Harper, I don't know how to thank you for what you've done. You didn't just stabilize my aircraft, you saved my life. All of us." Lena allowed herself a small, tight smile, though her hands remained poised over the console. "Just keep flying, Captain. That's what counts. Focus on the mission." The pilots continued toward the northern ridge, scanning for enemy activity while executing the reconnaissance plan. Lena's mind, however, could not rest. She knew that one misstep during descent, or when transmitting sensitive data, could jeopardize the entire mission. Every decision from here onward had to be flawless. She guided Reynolds and the squadron through incremental adjustments, rerouting systems as needed and anticipating potential hazards. As the jets approached the observation point, Reynolds radioed a status update. "Harper, reconnaissance systems are online. I'm transmitting data now." Lena monitored the telemetry and transmission feeds, ensuring that each packet of intelligence reached command without interruption. She felt a thrill of satisfaction as the screens confirmed a clean transfer. The information collected today could alter strategic decisions and save countless lives on the ground. Her role in this mission, invisible though it might be, was critical to national security. "Good work, Captain," Lena said, her voice calm but proud. "Keep the jet stable during data transfer. Avoid abrupt maneuvers until the transmission is complete." Minutes ticked by as the pilots maintained formation, keeping the aircraft steady while the sensitive intelligence uploaded. Lena's eyes never left the monitors, anticipating every minor fluctuation and correcting it in real time. It was exhausting, but she didn't flinch. She knew that the success of the mission and the lives of the pilots depended on her vigilance. Suddenly, a warning indicator flashed on Reynolds' console. A minor surge in electrical flow threatened the stability of the primary flight controls. Lena's pulse quickened. "Captain Reynolds, minor surge detected. Reduce throttle by 5% and divert auxiliary power to the left stabilizer. Maintain heading. I'm guiding you step by step." Reynolds obeyed, his voice steady. "Understood, Harper. Doing it now." The jet responded, the surge mitigated without incident. Lena exhaled, though her relief was brief. She quickly shifted focus to Torres' jet. which had begun showing signs of fuel feed irregularity during the data transmission. Lieutenant Torres, divert remaining auxiliary power to the fuel pumps. Monitor flow rate carefully. Keep altitude steady. Torres' voice wavered with tension. Copy that, Harper. Adjusting now. The jet stabilized once more, a testament to Lena's ability to manage multiple crises simultaneously. She realized, as the squadron transmitted the final data packets, that the success of this mission would forever change how she saw herself and how others would see her. As the jets completed their reconnaissance and began the return journey, Lena's mind reflected on the intensity of the past hours. She had moved beyond the role of a mechanic, guiding pilots through impossible scenarios and stabilizing critical systems mid-flight. She had acted decisively under pressure, improvising solutions in ways no one had expected. And in doing so, she had proven that heroism often resides where no one is looking, in places unrecognized and unseen. Landing at the base was a tense affair. The squadron descended carefully, pilots maintaining formation while executing Lena's instructions to the letter. She monitored every gauge, issuing minor adjustments to hydraulics, throttle, and stabilization as the jets approached the runway. Her calm voice guided them through the descent, a steady anchor amidst the whistling wind and fading daylight. Prepare for touchdown, Lena instructed, her voice firm and precise. Gradually reduce throttle. Align with runway markers. Maintain formation integrity. One by one, the jets touched down, rolling smoothly along the runway. Lena's fingers hovered over the console until all engines powered down and the pilots signaled their safe arrival. A collective sigh of relief filled the control room. Sweat streaked Lena's face, her muscles ached, but a deep sense of accomplishment replaced the tension that had gripped her all day. Captain Reynolds immediately approached the hangar, once out of his jet, helmet in hand, eyes bright with gratitude. "Harper," he said, voice trembling slightly, "you didn't just keep me alive, you kept all of us alive. I don't think anyone realizes what you just did up there." Lena shook her head modestly. "It was my job. I just followed the systems and stayed focused. That's all." Reynolds frowned, disbelief in his expression. "No, it's more than that. You went above and beyond. You were extraordinary. I've never seen anyone perform like that, mechanic or not." Other pilots began to gather, their faces a mixture of exhaustion, admiration, and awe. Torres and Lee approached, offering nods of respect and gratitude. Lena felt a warmth she had never experienced before the recognition of her skill, courage, and calm under unimaginable pressure. Commander Shaw arrived shortly after, walking briskly into the hangar. His eyes swept over Lena, then over the squadron. "Harper," he said, voice firm but filled with respect, "your actions today are beyond commendable. You stabilized multiple aircraft under extreme conditions and ensured the success of a mission critical to national security. You exemplify the highest standards of skill, courage, and professionalism. You saved lives. On behalf of the entire squadron in command, thank you." Lena felt her cheeks warm with a mix of pride and humility. She had never sought recognition, never craved accolades. She had acted out of necessity, responsibility, and instinct. Yet hearing those words, seeing the genuine respect in the eyes of the pilots and command staff, filled her with a profound sense of accomplishment. Later, Lena stood alone in the hangar, wiping the sweat and grime from her overalls. The jets were lined up, engines silent, the sun casting long shadows across the concrete. She reflected on the events of the day, the failures, the improvisations, the moments of fear, and the triumphs. She realized that her life had changed forever. She had stepped beyond being just a mechanic and had proven that courage, expertise, and determination could turn ordinary people into heroes in moments of extraordinary crisis. As the hangar emptied and the pilots returned to debriefing, Lena allowed herself a quiet smile. Today, she had not only saved lives, but had also discovered her own potential, the ability to remain calm under pressure, think creatively, and act decisively when it mattered most. She had become an indispensable force, invisible yet essential, a guardian of the skies. For the first time, Lena Harper understood something fundamental. Heroism isn't defined by medals, rank, or recognition. It's defined by action, by courage in the face of uncertainty, and by the willingness to step forward when others cannot. And in the hours above the mountains, amidst turbulence, mechanical failures, and the threat of unseen danger, Lena had done exactly that. Her phone buzzed in her pocket, a text from Captain Reynolds. "Thank you, Lena. We owe you everything." She smiled faintly, feeling the weight of those words. She didn't need more. The knowledge that she had made a difference, that she had saved lives, was enough. And as she gazed out at the jets, gleaming in the afternoon sun, Lena knew that she had changed not just in the eyes of others, but in her own understanding of who she was. The ordinary mechanic had become extraordinary, not because she sought glory, but because she dared to rise to the moment when the stakes were highest. The hangar was quiet now, a stark contrast to the chaos of the past hours. Lena Harper stood beside the lead jet, her hands resting lightly on the cool metal fuselage, feeling its vibrations as though it still remembered the turbulence, the mid-flight repairs, the near catastrophe she had just prevented. Around her, the squadron debriefed and filed reports, their voices low and professional, but every glance toward her carried unspoken respect. Today, she had done more than fix aircraft. She had saved lives. Captain Reynolds approached her, his flight suit streaked with sweat and dust, helmet tucked under one arm. His green eyes, normally sharp and unflappable, were softened with gratitude and awe. "Harper," he said, voice low but earnest, "you've done something incredible. Not just saving my jet, but all of us. I don't know anyone else who could have pulled this off mid-mission. You're more than a mechanic. You're a hero." Lena shook her head modestly, a small smile tugging at her lips. "I was just doing my job. I knew what had to be done." "No," Reynolds insisted. "You went beyond the job. You acted when no one else could. You saved lives. And today, the squadron knows it. Everyone knows it." She allowed herself to glance around at the other pilots. Torres, Lee, and even the junior squad members offered small nods, a mixture of relief and admiration on their faces. They had been in the air when everything had almost gone wrong, relying on their training and instinct, but Lena had been their anchor, the unseen hand that kept chaos from claiming them. She realized for the first time that her role had extended beyond the hangar, beyond the mechanic's bay, into something larger, something profoundly significant. Commander Shaw arrived shortly afterward, his crisp uniform belying the exhaustion etched in his face. He stopped in front of Lena, folding his hands behind his back. "Harper, the mission was a success thanks to you. The reconnaissance data you ensured was transmitted without interruption is already being analyzed. Your actions prevented a potential disaster and preserved the integrity of the squadron. You've demonstrated courage, precision, and extraordinary skill. Today, you've earned the recognition you deserve." Lena's hands tightened instinctively. Recognition had never been her goal. She had always worked quietly, meticulously, behind the scenes, ensuring that aircraft were ready, pilots safe, and missions successful. But the weight of Commander Shaw's words, combined with the admiration in the eyes of the pilots around her, pressed on her chest in a way that was both humbling and affirming. "You've saved lives, Lena," Reynolds said again, stepping closer. "Not just in the air, but on the ground, too. The intelligence we collected today could change everything strategically. And you made it possible. For a long moment, Lena simply absorbed the gravity of what she had done. Every quick decision, every improvisation in the cockpit's absence, every instruction issued to stabilize failing systems. It had all mattered. And now, the reality of her impact hit her fully. She had crossed a threshold, moving from being just a mechanic to someone whose expertise and courage directly influenced the lives of dozens of trained pilots, and the success of a critical mission. Later that day, the squadron gathered formally in the hangar for a debriefing. Lena stood slightly apart, her posture modest, though the pride in her chest was undeniable. Commander Shaw addressed the group, his voice firm but warm. Today, you faced adversity in the skies. Every one of you performed admirably. But there is one among us whose actions went beyond protocol, beyond expectation. Lena Harper stabilized multiple aircraft mid-flight, provided critical guidance during mechanical failures, and ensured the success of the mission. Her actions exemplify courage, skill, and dedication. Lena, the squadron owes you more than words can express. Applause echoed through the hangar, pilots and technicians alike rising to their feet. Lena's cheeks flushed, but she allowed herself to step forward, shaking hands with the squadron members who approached her in gratitude. Torres offered a quiet nod of respect. "You saved my life up there," he said. "I'll never forget it." Even Reynolds, usually composed and stoic, placed a hand on her shoulder. "We all owe you everything," he said. "You've set a standard none of us will forget. You've earned your place in the squadron, Lena, and beyond that, you've earned our respect as a hero." For Lena, the words sank deep. Heroism had never been her ambition. She had trained for precision, for readiness, for responsibility. But heroism was something that could not be planned or anticipated. It was born in moments of necessity, in the face of fear, in the act of choosing courage when inaction could mean disaster. Today, she had lived that truth. After the debriefing, Lena walked alone along the row of jets, her fingers lightly brushing the smooth metal of the aircraft she had maintained, repaired, and in a sense, saved mid-mission. Memories of the turbulence, the failing systems, and the split-second decisions she had made raced through her mind. Each moment had been terrifying, yet empowering. She had discovered her own capacity for calm under pressure, for precise decision-making, for courage in a situation that no training could fully prepare her for. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. A message from Reynolds. "We'll never forget today. Thank you for everything. You're a true hero." She allowed herself a faint smile, feeling the weight of those words. Recognition, gratitude, respect, these were secondary to the fact that she had done what she had set out to do: keep her squadron alive, ensure mission success, and rise to the occasion when every second mattered. That evening, Lena returned home, exhausted, but with a profound sense of fulfillment. She reflected on the events of the day, realizing how far she had come from a quiet mechanic working behind the scenes to someone whose expertise, courage, and decisiveness had directly influenced the survival and success of her colleagues. She understood now that heroism was not about accolades or recognition. It was about action, responsibility, and courage under pressure. News of her bravery and ingenuity began to spread. Within military circles, her story was recounted as an extraordinary example of skill and courage. Her colleagues spoke in reverent tones of how she had stabilized multiple aircraft mid-mission, guided pilots through near-catastrophic failures, and ensured the success of a critical reconnaissance operation. She became a symbol not just of technical expertise, but of what one person's determination and courage could achieve under impossible circumstances. In the quiet of her home, Lena allowed herself a moment of reflection. She thought of the squadron, of the pilots she had guided, and of the mission itself. Every decision, every improvisation, every moment of courage had mattered. And as she looked toward the horizon, she realized something profound. Today she had changed, not just in the eyes of others, but in her own understanding of what she was capable of. She had crossed a threshold, stepping from anonymity into heroism. She had proven that ordinary people, when faced with extraordinary circumstances, could rise to meet the challenge and, in doing so, change the lives of countless others. Lena Harper, once just a mechanic, was now recognized as something far greater, a guardian, a hero, and an inspiration. And as the sun set over the base, casting long shadows across the hangar and the jets she had maintained and saved, Lena Harper felt a quiet satisfaction. She had faced the impossible, acted decisively, and emerged not only victorious, but transformed. Heroism, she realized, was not about seeking glory. It was about rising to the moment, trusting in one's abilities, and choosing courage when it mattered most. And today, Lena Harper had done exactly that. In the quiet of the fading day, she whispered to herself, a small smile forming, "I am ready for whatever comes next." The squadron had survived, the mission had succeeded, and a new chapter in Lena Harper's life had begun, one defined by courage, skill, and an unshakable commitment to do what was right, no matter the cost.